Um, my name is Nick Tempester. I'm a channel manager here at Blue Mantis. With me today, I'll have them introduce themselves, is Jeff Smith and Andy Rustad. You all probably know Andy very well, but why don't we start off with this quick introductions and I will take over. So Jeff, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Nick. Jeff Smith, Senior Practice Director for Managed Services at Blue Mantis. I'm primarily responsible for working with customers and partners in positioning our managed offerings into their clients and prospects and helping them create the configuration of services that the customer requires, and enabling them to get the contracts and generated and initiated as well. So nice to meet everybody, and hope you enjoyed the webinar today.
Hi, I'm Andy Rustad, Director of Engineering here at Sandler Partners, and know many of you, I'm sure, but I predominantly work with partners to enable them to sell additional technologies, and that includes introducing them and getting partners to work more with suppliers such as Blue Mantis.
Great. So this is basically an additional training to the Tech Roadshow that you folks attended at Sandler Partner this year. Blue Mantis was a sponsor, and it just felt right to do an additional deeper dive into actually uncovering and understanding the managed service landscape. So this is not going to be a product pitch whatsoever. Our agenda is, I lied. I'm going to give you 5 minutes of who Blue Mantis is for the folks that really don't know us that well. We're going to jump into a little bit of what's in it for me and what is the market opportunity and why should we care with Andy. And then we're going to turn it on over to Jeff. Jeff's been doing this for 25 years. He is certainly, probably even more than that, unfortunately, or fortunately, and really understands the landscape, how to identify opportunities, what people are doing, and what questions to be asking. And then at the end, we're just going to talk about resources we have. Please, the question, if you have questions, ask it. We're going to be watching in the Q&A section, and we'll stop and talk. It's always better when we can chat with you folks. So real quickly, Blue Mantis. Folks ask me all the time, who are we? Our tagline's pretty simple. We're a national security first IT support and services organization. My next slide will really explain what that means, but we're a 32-year-plus-year-old company. We've been doing this for a long time. We started as a value-added reseller, and as technology evolved, so didn't we. And shortly after, we became a managed service, or excuse me, a services organization, but still provide those procurement services. We're about 500 plus employees in 38 states, and we really focus solely on the domestic United States. We can help out overseas, but our primary focus is the U.S. Over 2,500 plus clients that we support in all different verticals. And the reason why we can touch all those different verticals is that security first mentality. As you can see on the right-hand side, on the bottom right-hand corner, our certifications. When we go into these engagements, our first question or how we want to hold ourselves is really talk to the client and what they've done to protect their data, because we see that as a foundational piece to all businesses. So our service stack, or the technologies we support. At the top, you can see is our cyber practice. That cyber practice is broken up into 3 levels: is incident response, advisory services and assessments, and managed services, managed security service provider. From the network and the data center modernization, I'll lump those into 2. Even though they're separate, but we started out in this business. We help organizations with digital transformation. We look at their networks, and then from there, we will help them design, implement, procure, and manage those environments. Modern workspace is really focused on the end user desktop. So part of our managed service offering that Jeff's going to get into or talk about, we really focus on helping that end user in not only just the support aspect of it, but also standing up and providing them with the equipment needed to do the job. Cloud really is a nebulous term. When we define cloud, we talk about it as more on the hyperscale environment, helping companies with, again, with that digital transformation, procuring those environments, standing them up, making sure they're operationally efficient and they're running appropriately. And then the last piece that really rounds off our service offering is resource management. Whether you need a virtual CIO for a year or a network engineer for a couple months, this desk can, this portion of our business helps us with boots on the ground, getting people to your clients' locations when needed. And how do we deliver these services? Well, we deliver them in three fashions. One is procurement. That's how we started out. So if you just need something to purchase from us, we are going to provide that for you. And that is software and hardware. The second is professional services, those one-time engagements where your client has probably come to you and say, I need help with this. Can you help me? And I'm sure a lot of the times you've walked away from that because you never really had someone to do that. We love those engagements, whether it's assessment, project-based work, or what have you. Bring it to us because we want to discuss those. What we find is when we do these two first things, procurement, professional services, we're building trust and credibility and leads into where we all want to be, which is that managed service, the monthly recurring revenue. And then the last piece we delivered is managed services. When we say managed services, and you're going to see the acronym MS, that's not Microsoft, that we coined that, that's managed services. We're looking at it at the desktop layer, the endpoint, doing a tier 1, tier 2 support, the infrastructure layer, all those devices, peripherals, whether it's a server, switch, router, firewall, printer, we're going to support those, and then the security layer. So what we're going to talk about today is managed services as a whole and how to identify those opportunities. So without saying, I'm going to turn it over to Andy, and I'm going to actually build this out for you, Andy. And he's probably familiar with this slide, but I've highlighted areas that really focus in what we do here when you're selling a managed service.
Yeah, definitely a favorite slide of mine right here. I mean, to me, this is what it's all about. I think this is why partners join calls like this or try to engage suppliers and become more familiar and more part of their ecosystem, is to really sell more, right? That's what we're all after, is how do we help our clients? How do we understand how we can position different technologies? So when you look at a slide like this, what's really interesting is in our space, from the TSD side and most agents out there, if you look at the overall existing book of business, roughly 80% of it falls into the telecommunications and unified communication space. And if you look at those two, the combination of those two really make up just, let's say maybe 25% of annual IT spend of the clients that you're talking to today. So what Nick's highlighting here is really a great opportunity to go back into either existing accounts or go wider with those new prospective clients that you're speaking with. And the areas that we've seen just considerable success with Blue Mantis in particular over the past year and a half has been these 4 areas that are outlined. Cybersecurity, which without question, I would say most introductory, discovery, high-level calls that I'm doing with new prospects and partners, I almost always lead cybersecurity first. And the reason is cybersecurity is top of mind with almost every business we talk to, regardless of the size of that organization. Now, that doesn't mean that they have budget for it in the SMB space. Oftentimes they don't. They may not even see the value in spending much money in it, but it's definitely top of mind, and they do want to talk about it and be educated about it. And the reason we start there And I'm talking about just at the point we're engaged. We haven't engaged Blue Mantis yet. Is just to get a little understanding of what their security posture looks like today. And from that, we can quickly run into things like patch management. And the second we hit patch management, now we're into a conversation where it's going to quickly lead down into infrastructure, software, IT services. And we're going to uncover a lot of opportunities. And the reason I say a lot of opportunities is, again, we get stuck selling telecommunication services like connectivity and UCaaS. While we're in there having that discovery conversation, we need to touch on these other 4 areas. Nick?
Yeah. The one thing I'd just add to that cybersecurity conversation, you can see the spend in the different areas. And cybersecurity is the smallest spend here. I like the conversation with cybersecurity because it gives you a blueprint of the entire company. Because when you're having that conversation, you're learning about what they have for firewalls and switches, how old they are, what's their direction. Same with servers, or are they moving to the cloud? And it just really opens up you with what can I sell next to my clients.
Yep, no doubt about it.
So I pulled this from Jeff's slides because we wanted to kind of not start off on a negative tone, but really when we're talking managed services, who should we stay away from, right? And the one thing that I see in the channel, I've been doing it for a while with Andy, is folks really focus on price. And that's really the wrong way to think about this, right? They're solving a business problem. They're trying to achieve something. So price is a determining factor, but usually after we've identified that the framework that we've built is proper. The one thing that I'll get a lot is I have my client's invoice. Can you create a proposal? And the answer is going to be no. It's a great reference point, but there's no 2 MSP providers that have built their service offerings the same. So for us to go and build something off somebody else's invoice is next to impossible. So we need to have a conversation with it. Next one, no IT staff. Yes, we do have clients that don't have a big, strong IT presence, but it's always great to have an IT staff, right? Because when we're talking about help desk services, usually they're low-end folks. We need people that are going to lead us into the direction of that organization. The Mendoza line of the right size company, 100 employees. I threw an asterisk out there. I don't want to show you a hard stop. Let's talk about the industry. Let's talk about the opportunity. But the reality is the lowest that I've seen so far, being here for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years now, is a 5K MRR. And people are like, well, that's a lot of money. It's not really a lot of money. It's 60 grand a year. That's not even enough for one employee. So for a 24/7 organization that has all the tooling, hardware, software, and a staff that's going to support your client, that's pretty inexpensive.
Nick, just to add something to that, I think that is one of the areas that we often get hung up on is, like you said, just a cost deal or whatever. But really, oftentimes, what we're seeing is that it's a labor challenge, is what or a labor shortage is what the client's having on their side. Hiring and retaining additional staff for their team. So to Nick's point, 5,000 might sound like a lot. It's not, because that same client likely has looked at, well, what would it cost to hire somebody to do this? And this is going to end up being at least half of what that would cost. And you're going to get a lot more out of this relationship.
And it's not even the employee count; it's the tooling, right? It's the ticketing system. It's everything else that goes along with it. So so. Anyways, I don't want to harp on that. The last 2 I'm going to lump together is setting unrealistic expectations, custom. If the client is asking for things that we can't do, then it's going to be a bad experience for their end users, for you, and for us. So we will stretch, but we don't want to do a complete 180 and just to satisfy a client. So we'll talk through those things, but we want to recognize those up. And we're not asking you to recognize those. That's our challenge, but we just want to put that out that clients will ask for a lot of things, and we just have to make sure that we stay in our swim lanes. Now, positive benefits, why you should care or why you should be having this conversation. If you sell a circuit, as you know, you are open for a competitor coming in there and taking that, or even now UCAS for that matter. When you sell a managed service, that becomes an extremely sticky client for at least 3 years, most likely 60 months, because they typically stay with you know with you, which turns into long-term revenue cycles. But really, in my opinion, the huge benefit is we have these constant meetings where we're uncovering all these new opportunities within this, whether it's, hey, I'm going to be replacing my PBX. Can you help us out there? No, I can't. But the partner that just brought us in can, and we can then bring you guys folks back into it. But we want you part of these phone calls at all stages, because now you're finding new opportunities within them. You're also, during these meetings that we have, you're accessing different stakeholders. You're going to find that CFOs and CEOs are part of these quarterly or monthly meetings that we're having. And the biggest one is, even if you're not making a lot of revenue on something, a lot of money, you're keeping your premium competitors out, you're keeping the CDWs and the SHIs out, that all they want to do is sell equipment and they provide some of these services, but they're out of the equation. So I'm going to turn it over now for the majority of the conversation to Jeff, and he's going to really dive deep into what it is, how to identify, what to look for, and what you can benefit from.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. And before I dive in, I just want to make sure people understand that you can ask questions. So if you want to post a question in the webinar, we will certainly service that question as we go along, and we hope to have some time at the end for questions as well. So as Nick said, I've been doing managed services for close to 30 years, and obviously managed services today means something different than it did even 5-10 years ago. There's a lot of different definitions out there if you do any kind of research around the concept of managed services. Some of the common terms you'll hear: outsourcing, co-sourcing. You'll hear, third-party service provider, things like that associated with the concept of a managed services engagement. There really isn't a right answer as to how to define managed services, is really what I'm saying. The way we look at that market is, if a customer is looking to consume a service that has an ongoing nature to it, it's something that is going to be continually delivered over a long period of time, and that's something that they want us to provide to them, then it is technically a managed offering, right? We're going to be providing resources and tooling and process and procedure, and we're going to be aligning that with the rest of the organization to make sure that the experience they get fits within their current framework, their process, their approach from an IT operations perspective. So the primary objective here is not to define it, but to let you know that the concept of managed services is a bit vague, intentionally so, because pretty much anything out there can be consumed as a managed offering. For Blue Mantis specifically, we're going to focus on the concept of IT operations and IT security operations for managed services purposes as we move forward in this. Nick, next slide, if you don't mind. So let's talk about some examples of things that you would commonly see as requests for managed services. Service desk, user experience services, as we define it, is the direct support of a customer's end user community. Basic tier 1 IT or tier 1, tier 2 IT. Managed IT infrastructure, we define that as digital operations. Infrastructure is a bit of a legacy term in the industry today. People think of infrastructure meaning physical networks and physical servers or virtual servers, things that they own and are sitting in their own facilities. But really, infrastructure is digital today. It's that plus it's cloud or colo or hosted environments. It can be assets that don't have a physical nature at all. It's just code. So we really define that as digital operations. Security operations, or MSSP, is commonly known in the market, is where any kind of cybersecurity element is being delivered to the customer. That could be Patching is an example of that, antivirus, malware, SIM, SOC, services, things of that nature. Endpoint management and lifecycle management. So where we're managing or maintaining the devices the users are using to connect to the environment and to run their applications and services. You'll also hear terms like platform as a service, managed network services, backup disaster recovery as a service, managed hosting and cloud management services. So all of these are examples of areas where managed services is common. And one of the good things about us as an organization is we have solutions in each of these spaces. So we can definitely service any of those requirements by a customer. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about an agreement. What does a managed services agreement look like, right? So it's something that is going to set the tone and the expectations for what we're going to deliver to the customer and the value they're going to get from our services. So these are some of the common things you'll find in a managed services agreement. Obviously, the scope. What are we responsible for? Are we monitoring systems? Are we patching systems? Are we doing incident response? Are we doing problem management, change management? What IT operational activities are we going to be performing within that scope? From a service level agreement perspective, in the MSP space, this is commonly things like response times to issues. You might have average speed to answer on the service desk. How quickly do we pick up the phone when the end user calls? There's a ton of service level agreement metrics that are out there in the market. We'd like to understand what is important to the customer. What are the things that they think drive value in consuming the services? Because ultimately that's what we want to do is drive value. Provider and customer responsibilities. So it's really, really important to align what we're going to be responsible for and what the customer or their other partners are going to be responsible for. Most of our engagements are designed as what we call co-sourcing, and they're designed in a way that we will not be the only IT service provider for that customer. They will have other providers. Could be their communications provider. It could be a particular application service provider. It could even be someone who's doing security when we're doing service desk. The approach we take here is not to try and own everything in the customer environment, but to come in and fill the gaps and voids that exist today between them and their current providers, show tremendous value, and then over time, show them how it can be both economic benefit as well as an operational benefit to allow us to do more and more for them. Obviously, we have to set up payment terms, generally speaking, annualized agreements or multi-year agreements. Payment terms could be, monthly, quarterly, or upfront annually. Term and termination is important. We are writing an annualized agreement, so we have to understand what constitutes a condition where termination may be required. Confidentiality, how are we going to protect our rights and the customer's rights in the delivery of the services? We're going to have access to a lot of information in their environment. We're going to have system information. We might have access to certain application data. We might be doing backups, which means we have a full set of their environment. So we have to be really, really precise in how we protect their interests. Intellectual property rights on their side as well, right? So again, we may have access to some of those things. And then liability and indemnification. How do we protect both ourselves and the customer from some sort of outside influence or unknown situation or events that may come up? And how do we work collaboratively to make sure that both parties are protected in those cases? So again, just some of the key elements that are associated to a managed services agreement. Next slide, Nick. So let's talk about how you can build a pipeline for this business. So there's really two areas of pipeline building. The first is around a new customer acquisition approach. So I like to describe this as compelling events. A managed services engagement, by and large, is coming from some sort of compelling event that has happened within the customer environment. It could be something like they have an existing MSP that is coming up for renewal and they just want to check into the market to see what options do I have. Maybe they've been with the MSP 5 or 10 years and they're unsure if the MSP is really maturing or advancing their capabilities. They could be coming out of a bad relationship, but they might just be coming out of a relationship that needs to be validated. So obviously knowing any of your existing customers' MSP agreements and their termination or renewal dates is a really good way to understand when you might be able to engage with them, to look at potentially, collecting that business as well.
Hey,
Anytime-
Jeff, I just
Oh,
want to jump in here real quickly. Folks, I would say that is the number one. If I had to calculate the leads that come in from you folks, I'd say that would be the number one that comes in. And some of them really good opportunities because of what Jeff said earlier, is that MSP didn't grow, but your client did, and they just outgrew them. So it's a really easy question to ask, and it's a really easy talk track. So I can't, the value of just asking that question, you'll find that's an easy pipeline builder.
Yeah, great point, Nick. So, what we're really trying to do is give you areas to explore or areas to identify that allow you to go in and proactively, kind of start that conversation. Anytime a customer grows or their business retracts, any type of shift in the size or scale of a company, either up or down, is a compelling event that commonly includes the ability for them or the desire for them to consume managed services. Managed services can save a customer 30-40% of their operational costs. So if their business is on a downturn, maybe they sold off a portion of their organization, they have less IT budget, managed services might be a really good thing to look at. In the growth side, it comes from a scale issue. If you are delivering IT services internally, when the organization grows, the only way to scale that business is hire more people. And we all know that the labor market is challenging. IT people are expensive. Skills need to be maintained. All of that is a cost of growth for a customer. When you look at a managed services engagement, typically your cost is linearly aligned to the scale of the customer. Much more predictable. It's also much more efficient when you get to that max point on your current team and you need to add another staff member. You might be increasing your staffing costs by 30%. Whereas if you only grow 10% and you increase your staff by 30%, now you're overspending. So there's a really good linear line between growth and cost of managed service. If they're having any internal staff attrition within their IT team, if you know that someone has left recently, maybe someone's taking a new position within the organization and moving out of IT, right? Anything like that could be a great opportunity for them to engage in managed services, mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, large-scale business events. If they're expanding into new markets, new geographies, rolling out new products. Any of those things are great opportunities to say, how do you plan to support your organization from an IT operations perspective through this business event? If they're moving into a new geography or into new markets, they might need to expand their capabilities to a 7x24 basis. Whereas today, maybe their internal team only supports 8x5. So again, great opportunity there. And then if they are moving into new regulatory spaces, if they're trying to achieve a certain security compliance or some other kind of framework from an operations perspective, and they need assistance there. We're a mature organization. We have a 30-year history and we have a SOC 2 compliance. So we can immediately mature a customer's IT operation maturity. I think I just duplicated mature there twice in that sentence. But we can do that immediately just by consuming our service. So a lot we can do there. Again, questions, let us know, and we'll service those as we move along. Next slide.
Yep. And before we move on, what's really great about all these examples is, yes, they're all perfect managed service clients. But when they become managed service clients, there's so much professional service work that needs to be done. When we jump into this, there's so much more pull-through business to come through. So just keep that in mind, that we just don't end at managed services. We land and expand, and we find all these different cool opportunities for you to work on.
Yeah, Nick, I see we have a question. Do you want to take that question? Kyle asked a question, says, when an engagement begins with Blue Mantis, is a Blue Mantis sales rep and Blue Mantis sales engineer assigned to the opportunity?
So I'll take that. So Kyle, no, as of today, you would work with the channel team over at Blue Mantis. So I would work with you, and but yes, there would be a sales engineer engaged. And at the end, I talk about the process a little bit in regards to I found an opportunity, what's next. So let's table the rest of that, but just know you'll be working with me, not a direct salesperson.
Yeah, and we do have a sales engineering team that's dedicated to our managed services practice. I'm one of those, so I get on these calls a lot, as well. Next slide.
Did I not go to the next slide?
Oh, sorry, you did. I'm sorry, it was blocked with a box there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the other part of pipeline building. So, okay, we have acquired a new customer. That customer is most likely not going to be static for the next 3 years, right? They're going to have changes that happen in their environment. They're going to have new needs. They're going to have new platforms, new systems, whatever that is. There's a constant capability to expand within the existing customer. So one of the things that MSPs get wrong, a lot of MSPs get wrong, is once they bring a new customer and they think that's sort of the end of the story. Okay, I've got them and they're in a 3-year agreement and I can just deliver the services I promised. And at the end of 3 years, they're just going to renew because it's easy. What ends up happening is if you're not in, as Nick mentioned, those operational meetings or engaging with the customer on a regular basis to evaluate how they see the services being valuable to the organization, you're eventually going to get out of phase with them. You're going to get to a point where they think they're getting something less valuable than maybe you think, or they might have a problem or issue that you missed on one of those meetings that never really got resolved. Managed services is an operational service. It's also a very human service in a lot of ways. There will be defects, there will be errors, there will be things that don't go 100% right. The key is not to try and make it a perfect service. The key is to make sure that the customer understands that you are working very closely with them anytime those things happen to make sure that those issues get addressed and are not repeated. So when you have a customer and you move into an operational change state, they're going to have new requirements. They may have different outcomes. You might have, again, renewals and refresh of existing equipment and technology that they need to perform. Not only is that a procurement opportunity and potentially a professional services opportunity, there's also the potential for new managed service. Maybe they're only having us do their network layer and they need to refresh their virtual server environment. Great opportunity to say, hey, things on the network side are going really well. What do you think about expanding that into your server environment? As an example, renewals for other third-party delivered services. Great opportunities for us to talk to existing customers about vendor consolidation. There's definitely a benefit to having multiple services under a single service provider. You have less providers to deal with. You have a deeper, more intimate relationship. And within those services, the operations is actually more efficient because we're handling multiple operational work streams for them, and everything is kind of handled within our teams. And then obviously, if there's new IT leadership that comes into the organization, they're going to come in with their own perspective as to what the right balance of managed versus internal versus other third-party vendor solutions needs to be. And you want to get ahead of that. You want to go in and kind of protect your current turf, right? Hey, nice to meet you. Want to make sure you know everything we're doing for you, how things are going. We want to get your feedback and thoughts on what's really important to you as the new leader. And then you want to start looking for ways to build that relationship and expand your capabilities internally. So from a pipeline building perspective, it's really two things. It's acquiring the new customer, but then staying on top of that customer throughout the life cycle to continue to expand that. Next slide. Okay.
Yep.
So let's talk about customer retention. So again, as you can tell, we're all about long-term relationships here. So I would say on average, our managed services clients are between 5 and 10 years of tenure with us today. When we bring a new customer in, on average, they're staying a minimum of 5, but closer to 10 years with us as a service provider. We actually have some relationships that go back 25 years. So long-term sticky to next point. But some of the things you really need to pay attention to: customer satisfaction and user satisfaction. So you really want to be keen, have your ear to the ground with your sponsors and stakeholders, the relationships you have, whether it's at a leadership level or an IT functional level. But you also want to understand the direct user engagement. So if we're doing service desk, we do a lot of surveys and other things to understand how does the end user feel about our service? Are we doing a good job? Are we being responsive? Are we solving their problems? That is the doorway into a customer's understanding of how you are delivering as a service provider. If you're not doing a good job with the end users, IT leadership is going to hear about it, especially if that end user happens to sit in the C-suite, right? So you got to stay on top of that. Continual engagement, just to make sure everything is going well at a high level. Again, those operational meetings we typically do monthly. Critical points in time to just make sure the customer feels really good. Making sure that we bring them extra value. And when I say from service intelligence, what I mean is, as a service provider, we have very intimate knowledge about their environment. Whatever we're supporting or managing, we're collecting a lot of data operationally around how that environment works today. We want to make sure that the customer gets more value out of that. An example is, if we're delivering a management service for their firewalls, we want to make sure they understand well in advance when that firewall might be going end of life. At least 6 months, if not a year in advance, because we want to make sure they build in their IT budget a refresh for that. If their storage platform is getting consumed, we want to show them the trend of that months in advance so that we're not waiting until it's 90% consumption to actually raise the flag and say, oh, you need a new storage array, because most customers are not going to be able to do that without budgeting in advance. So those are examples of how we bring that intelligence forward and make sure the customers are getting more out of the services than just the things we are responsible to do on a daily basis.
A real key one that we're talking to all of our managed clients today is Windows 11. And I don't know if you want to touch base on that, Jeff, real quickly, because that seems to be a common conversation we're having with folks.
Yeah, it's a great example. So Windows 11, obviously Windows 10, and Microsoft announced the retirement. It's October of 2025, which seems a lifetime away, but it's really only just over a year. We proactively went into every single one of our customers and analyzed their endpoints to determine if they're compliant with Windows 11 or not. We've already done that work. We're communicating with those customers now to give them a full year to get ready to be that replacement. Now, out of the 15,000 endpoints that we're supporting today, about 15% of those are not compliant from a hardware perspective, meaning they're going to have to replace those devices. So it gives us a great opportunity to be extra valuable as an MSP. Now, we hope they buy them from us. We hope they allow us to go ahead and configure and deploy them, and obviously continue to manage them. We don't require it, but obviously we're hoping that by bringing this forward, we're going to get more opportunities there. Proactive alignment and when customer situations change, if their needs change, just making sure we're ahead of those things, and that just makes them feel like we're a partner. And we're not just servicing them when things break, but we're actually helping them plan for the future and be more aligned as their needs may change. When we do make a mistake, and in managed services, mistakes will be made, we just need to own it. Own up any fault in the systems, any misses from a service perspective, any defects. We have a rich tracking process that we've developed for our customers to make sure when we define or identify a miss, we have a discrete solution on how to prevent that being repeated. And then clear expectations and outcomes. I can't reinforce this enough. If we're fully aligned on with the customer on the front end of the engagement and throughout the service delivery, we should do a really, really good job, because we built the framework of our service system over deliver. And as long as the customer doesn't have unrealistic expectations, we should be able to hit the mark very, very easily.
So before we move on, I want to just touch base on the proactive alignment. Real life situation just happened 3 weeks ago with a managed service client that Sandler brought us to. They wanted us to meet with their call center because they're on a VDI environment and we're about to take it over in a few months. And they say, are we doing it the right way? So we went in there in an advisory service level and discussed different options that they have and recognize that there is a better way to do it and learn that that client is moving to um, 5 nines for call center and potentially looking to replace their PBX vendor. So through that proactive engagement, we're now going to get a PS engagement with them to rip and replace, well, not rip and replace, but replace what they're doing today with a new virtual desktop solution. They're registered with 5 9, and they're also now bringing in Call Tower because they're a big Microsoft shop. So those proactive engagements are gold. And again, we want you in those meetings with us.
I just have one more slide. I'm going to hand it back to Nick. So I just threw this up there because we do follow a construct we call business outcome alignment. So we really want to understand, why does the customer want to consume managed services in the first place? Sometimes the answer is obvious. We don't have any internal IT staff or very limited IT staff. It might be that they have a specific requirement for after hours and weekend support for a second and third shift in their manufacturing facility, right? It could be that they are in a hyperscale growth mode and they really need a predictable cost model to get them through this process for IT operations. So we want to really understand that set of business drivers. Usually the first question I ask of them is, why are you even considering managed services? Once they tell me that, I'm using that as bait for the rest of the engagement. I'm making sure that they understand that I understand why they're even in the conversation. So it's really critical for us to get this. To Nick's earlier point, by throwing us a invoice from a current MSP, we can tell the services that they're consuming, but we don't know the why. Why are they actually consuming those services? They might be just because they always have. And that to me is not really a great answer. If we want to reestablish the value of the managed services and make sure that they fully are invested in that value, right? We want to make sure that we're delivering the highest value from what we're doing on a daily basis. So again, that constant engagement is really critical. We also want to make sure that we stay within whatever process, procedure, framework, approach that they have today. We go in with mature and effective ways of completing the work that we're doing, but a lot of customers needs a wrapper around that to make sure it fits within everything else they're doing from an IT operations perspective. This is how we handle account password resets when a user requests one. You have to validate the user's identity. Here's how you do that. That's going to differ for every client. So we want to stay within that as much as it makes sense, and then offer them better ways to get it done. And once they say, yep, I agree that's a better way to get it done, then we move in that direction. Lastly, we want to make sure that they understand that what we're leveraging for platforms and tools are really industry-leading platforms. ServiceNow, right? As an example of that. Very few, if any, of our customers could afford ServiceNow on their own. But we bring it with us as part of the services. And that gives them a way to modernize their approach as well. So this is really the importance around business drivers and making sure we're hitting those marks. I do see there's another question, Nick. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. So Kyle asked, is Blue Mantis utilizing any kind of AI with managed services providers? If so, where?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Kyle, for that. So we are. So the whole AI conversation in IT is really interesting in this sense. I'm gonna pontificate for a second here anyway. AI is not new in IT. AI has been around for over a decade. We have had AI functionality in our infrastructure operations and in our service desk business for that long. Now, it's not AI as users think about AI. They think about it as generative AI. I'm going to ask a machine a question in natural language and it's going to spit out the answer. What we've been using it for is things like alert suppression, alert correlation, false positive identifications, efficiency and effectiveness within the delivery of our service. So today we're using it in infrastructure, in service desk, enabling like automated resolution of user-based issues. And we're also doing it in security. So all three pillars of our core managed services offering leverage AI functionality today. And all of that is instantly enabled when a customer comes into our service offering.
All right.
All right. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Nick, but I can service any questions that come up as well.
Yep, great question, Kyle. So last slide that we really have for today is I found an opportunity, now what? And this kind of goes back to what Kyle was asking me for, like, who do I work with? How does this work? First thing we want to do is qualify it, right? So call, email, text. The TSDs have way to get in contact with us. Let's talk about what you've found. After we've identified that, that it is a good opportunity, we'll ask you to register it. Registration's super easy. And then once that's done, I then or my team, whoever you're working with, will go then bring in the proper resources. Those proper resources can be folks from Jeff's teams, could be other folks. But once we have all the resources aligned, we want to get on with an internal call with you and really discuss the engagement, your relationship, how you found the opportunity, get as much information in our hands prior to that call. So we're not repeating anything that you've already done. You may have a spreadsheet that you've done some questionings asked, or we want to make sure we're not redundant and make it the most efficient meeting after. Also, we want to define everyone's role in this response, in this engagement. Some partners want to take lead, others want just to be known that we're doing things and keep them abreast of any meetings that we have. And from there, we let the engagement go. If you run through a couple of these with us, because I know a lot of you folks are like, well, I need to know more about your service. I know more about the features and functionalities we'll just be able to sell you. But I would say for now is we certainly can have that call as a follow-up to kind of dive deeper into our services. But the best way to do this is to let us operate and watch us and learn as we go. You do one or two of these with us, you're going to understand that, oh, if I send you an invoice, that's not going to do it because of the flexibility Blue Mantis has, or how they define their managed services versus another company. So that is really all we had today. We have about 10 minutes left if anyone had any further questions. I'm available. My counterparts, JMac and Dave Volleman, are available. We want to sell more of these services because when we do, we really gain so much more of the client's wallet share. With that said, Andy, any parting words?
I'm going back to something Jeff was talking about earlier, and Windows 11, and looking at existing endpoints, what they're leveraging, and the outcome was 15% needed to do something. So one of the things we bump into partners that I support frequently is they've migrated to 365 sometime over the past few years. Typically 500 to say 5,000 users, but they're maybe didn't realize the cost savings that they were expecting to. And oftentimes what we see at a high level without doing an assessment is there's extreme SaaS sprawl. So they're E3 or E5, and they're not using Microsoft for endpoint, DLP, MDM, all these tools that they're paying third-party providers for. And more often than not, it was just acquired at a different time. But in short, how can we engage Blue Mantis in those types of, let's call it a Microsoft 365 assessment? What's the minimum size, and what does that engagement look like?
For an assessment, and we're shifting gears a little bit to our CSP model, our CSP FinOps, but still a managed service. and it's probably the easiest way to get into an organization. There is no minimum size, but to do an assessment, I can say the maximum size is probably somewhere around 2,500. And the reason being is that's where Microsoft wants to sell an EA. Anything between, I would say, 250 to that number, 2,500, would be a good organization for us to kind of dive deep into what they're doing. And it's not just the 365, right? Because when we think of that, are we buying the right licenses? Are we buying the right term? How can we save and be more operational efficient? But if they're using Azure and they have a big Azure spend, that's where we can really dive deep in cost optimization, optimize those environments. We can really see and show a 30% return confidently on things that clients that are spending somewhere around 25K a month with Microsoft or AWS, for that matter. Andy, I don't know if I answered that question.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm going to piggyback onto that, staying in the Microsoft space. As Kyle mentioned, AI is coming up all over the place in all different fashions. So one that I think most of the people on the call and most partners in general are familiar with is more of, an intelligent virtual assistant, like Copilot at that level. But Copilot can be used at multiple levels across the organization. I haven't done any trainings with you guys, but my understanding is you guys have a practice around Copilot now. Is that accurate?
We do. So we're a big Microsoft shop, big Microsoft partner, right? So we're like number 13 in the country or something like that. Unlucky number to be, but I think that's where we are. And we have recognized that Copilot specifically is going to have a very broad set of applications to most customers out there that are already Microsoft shops. So we have a Microsoft practice. That Microsoft practice has a set of Copilot services that can be delivered to customers today. And the goal of those services are to understand, what does a customer want to do with something like Copilot? What kind of outcomes do they want to get? What do they think that's going to do for their organization? The majority of the engagement so far have really been centered around user productivity, right? It's around making users more effective in their day-to-day operation. I've done some sessions with Microsoft around what Copilot means from a managed services perspective. And the interesting thing is the market doesn't really know right now how we're going to build a generative AI managed offering, because it's such a unique technology stack right now, and there's a lot of unknowns. There's a new concept coming up, though, that I think some organizations are going to start talking about. And the concept is called prompt engineering. And the idea behind that is, in order to get the most out of things like Copilot, you really have to ask it really smart questions, right? You have to phrase your questions correctly. Your data needs to be organized correctly, right? So data organization, data structure, data governance is massive when it comes to the effectiveness of AI. But your user community needs to be shown how to really use it properly. So I think this prompt engineering thing is going to be sort of like the next wave of IT careers out there, that people are going to start looking at, how do I become kind of a generative AI ninja for organizations that can really make sure they get the most out of this. So it's still new, it's still fresh. People are still trying to understand, and even the market's a little bit unsure as to where it's going to go. We're really focusing on enablement services right now to make sure customers are prepped and ready for the adoption of this. That's really what we're focused today. But mostly around data governance, understanding how their data is organized, how it can be leveraged to get the most out of something like Copilot.
No, that's perfect, because I think that kind of aligns with what we're seeing. Most, organizations in that upper S&B into the mid-market, business leaders are hearing a lot about AI, but they have no idea how they would leverage it. They just want to know how they could possibly leverage it, more of a education around it. And sounds like you guys are prepared to have that conversation.
Yeah, we absolutely can. We have some specialists in that space, in our Microsoft space, that are really spending, I'd say, probably 30–40% of their time right now around things like Copilot.
I'd say this, Andy. It's almost like 15 years ago when infrastructure as a service became something.
Yep.
And the IT professional on Monday morning received an email from the CEO, CFO that said, we need to move everything to the cloud. They're starting to feel these same conversations about, we need to move to Copilot. We need to do, and they're scrambling to find the answers too. So the next year will be very interesting. So folks on the phone, be aware of it, get yourself educated, call me. We can get on with those specialists to talk a little bit more about what we're doing. But it's going to be definitely interesting times.
Yeah. The pressure to move in this direction for most organizations is going to come from the top. I think most people in IT are like, well, it's a nice thing, but it's not really something that they're investing a ton of time and energy on. It's going to be, someone saw the ad, right, on Super Bowl Sunday that, showed an amazing amount of things you can do with generative AI. And now they just think they need it. They don't really know what it means. The foundational pieces are going to be critical. And so I think, again, the structured data, data integrity, data governance, this is really going to be a data play for probably the next 12 to 18 months.
Yep.
All right, folks. Is there another question? Nope, I think we're good. Listen, I appreciate everyone jumping on and spending time with us this morning. If you have follow-up questions, please reach out to us. We would love to have the conversation around you. We'd love to help you build pipeline in this MS world. I believe that you all have it out there. So happy Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for attending.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.